When LeBron James locked that bedroom door on June 8, 2018, he wasn't the king of the NBA anymore. He was a broken man who had just lived through basketball hell. What happened in those next 72 hours would change everything, not just for him, but for his family, his career, and everyone who thought they knew the real LeBron James. But what the world didn't know was that this wasn't LeBron's first breakdown. It was just the first one that nearly destroyed him completely. The Oracle Arena was still echoing with Golden State's celebration when LeBron walked off that court for the final time as a Cavalier. Game 4, swept again. The cameras caught his blank stare, but they missed the real story, the moment his soul cracked into 1,000 pieces. In the tunnel, away from the cameras, LeBron stopped walking. His security detail, led by his longtime bodyguard Marcus Thompson, watched as the strongest man they knew began shaking uncontrollably. "I can't breathe," LeBron whispered, loosening his jersey collar. "Marcus, I can't breathe." For a terrifying moment, Marcus thought LeBron was having a heart attack. The man who had played 48 minutes of basketball was now gasping for air in an empty corridor. "Get the team doctor," Marcus barked into his radio. "No," LeBron grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "No doctors, no one else sees this." Richard Klausner, the Cavaliers' team physician, had witnessed this before with elite athletes. Not heart attacks, panic attacks. The body's response to overwhelming stress and disappointment. For 20 minutes, LeBron sat on a plastic chair in a maintenance hallway, breathing into a paper bag, trying to convince his nervous system that the world wasn't ending. But in his mind it was. "I gave everything," he whispered to Marcus as they finally headed to the team bus. "Everything I had. 15 years of everything. And it's not enough. It's never enough." The bus ride to the airport was different this time. Usually LeBron would be on his phone, calling his agent Rich Paul, already strategizing about free agency. But on June 8, 2018, he sat in complete silence for the entire 40-minute ride. Teammates tried to console him. Kevin Love sat beside him, offering quiet words of encouragement. Tristan Thompson cracked jokes trying to lighten the mood. J.R. Smith simply placed a supportive hand on LeBron's shoulder. Nothing worked. LeBron was unreachable. The private jet flight back to Cleveland was 3 hours of tension. Bronny, 13 years old and basketball-obsessed, kept trying to talk to his father about the game. LeBron answered in monosyllables. Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Bryce, 11 and perceptive beyond his years, whispered to his mother. "What's wrong with Dad?" Savannah didn't know how to answer because she honestly didn't know. She had seen LeBron disappointed before, frustrated, angry, but she had never seen him gone. Little Zuri, only 3 years old, crawled onto her father's lap halfway through the flight. Usually, this would bring out LeBron's brightest smile, but now, he barely acknowledged her presence. He stared out the window at the clouds below, mechanically patting her back when she asked for attention. "Daddy play?" Zuri asked, holding up her favorite toy. "Not right now, baby," was all he managed. Savannah's heart broke watching this interaction. The man who had once said being a father was more important than basketball couldn't even engage with his baby girl. But what happened when they landed in Cleveland would terrify Savannah in ways she never imagined. Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, 2:47 a.m. The James family's private jet taxied to the VIP terminal where their security team and cars were waiting. Usually, there would be media presence, reporters hoping to catch LeBron's reaction, fans hoping for autographs despite the late hour. Tonight, the airport was eerily quiet. Word had gotten out that this wasn't the time to bother the king. The drive home to their Akron mansion normally took 45 minutes. LeBron usually spent this time on calls with Rich Paul, or FaceTiming with friends. Sometimes he'd play music and turn the car into a mobile dance party with the kids. Not tonight. The black Escalade moved through empty highways in complete silence. The only sounds were Zuri's sleepy breathing and the soft hum of tires on asphalt. Savannah kept stealing glances at her husband in the rearview mirror. He sat rigid, staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight she worried he might crack a tooth. "LeBron," she said softly, "do you want to talk about it?" He didn't respond. It was as if he hadn't heard her at all. When they pulled into their circular driveway, LeBron was out of the car before it came to a complete stop. He walked toward the house with purposeful strides, like a man on a mission. But what mission? Inside their sprawling home, everything was perfectly prepared. Snacks in the kitchen, clothes laid out, everything in its place. The house felt warm and welcoming. Instead, LeBron headed straight for the stairs. "LeBron, wait," Savannah called after him, juggling a sleeping Zuri and helping the boys with their bags. He paused at the bottom of the staircase and turned to look at his family. For just a moment, his expression softened. The love was still there, buried under layers of pain, but still there. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm sorry I let everyone down." "Dad, you didn't let us down," Bronny said immediately, showing maturity that impressed and heartbroke Savannah. LeBron looked at his oldest son, this young man who idolized him, who wore his jersey number, who dreamed of following in his footsteps. The weight of that responsibility suddenly felt crushing. Go to bed, kids, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We'll talk tomorrow. But there wouldn't be talking tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that. LeBron climbed the stairs like a man walking to his execution. Each step felt heavier than the last. By the time he reached the top, he was breathing heavily again, not from exertion, but from panic building in his chest. Inside the master bedroom, everything was exactly as they had left it 4 days ago. Savannah's jewelry on the dresser, his championship rings in their display case, family photos covering every surface. But all LeBron could see were the empty spaces in that ring display case, the spaces where rings 3, 4, 5, and 6 should have been. He sat on the edge of the bed, still in his travel clothes, and stared at those empty spaces for what felt like hours. Then he did something that would change his family's life for the next 3 days. He walked to the bedroom door and turned the lock. Click. That sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. Savannah, who was tucking Zuri into bed down the hall, froze when she heard it. In 16 years together, LeBron had never locked her out of their bedroom. Even during their worst fights, the bedroom had been neutral territory where they worked things out. But tonight, LeBron James locked out the world, including his family. What Savannah heard through that door in the next few minutes would haunt her for the rest of her life. Savannah finished tucking in Zuri, her mind racing with worry about what was happening behind that locked door. She walked down the hall quietly and pressed her ear against the master bedroom door. At first, nothing, just silence. Then she heard something that made her blood run cold. LeBron James, the man who had faced down the biggest stages in sports, who had been criticized by millions and never broken publicly, who had carried the hopes of an entire city on his shoulders, was crying. But this wasn't the tears of frustration after a tough loss. This wasn't the emotional release of disappointment. This was something primal, something that came from a place so deep and so dark that Savannah had never heard anything like it. These were the sobs of a man whose spirit was completely shattered. Deep, gut-wrenching cries that seemed to come from his soul. The sound of someone who had been holding everything together for so long that when it finally broke, it broke completely. She knocked softly on the door, her own eyes filling with tears. "LeBron, baby, please let me in." The crying stopped abruptly. For a moment she hoped he was coming to unlock the door. Instead, there was just silence. "LeBron, the kids might hear you. Please, just open the door, we can talk about this." More silence. Then, finally, his voice came through the door. But it wasn't the LeBron she knew. It was hollow, defeated, almost unrecognizable. I can't do this anymore, Savannah. I'm done." Those 4 words hit her like physical blows. In all their years together, through the decision backlash when they needed security details just to go to restaurants, through the 2011 finals loss when he was called everything but a man, through every criticism and every piece of hate mail, she had never heard LeBron say he was done. He had been discouraged, frustrated, angry, but never done. "What do you mean done?" she asked through the door, trying to keep her voice steady. "I mean, I'm done pretending I'm something I'm not. I'm done trying to be perfect for everyone. I'm done failing everyone who believes in me." His voice cracked on the word failing, and Savannah realized this went so much deeper than basketball. "LeBron, you haven't failed anyone. One game doesn't define you. It's not one series." His voice came back with sudden intensity, but not anger, desperation. "It's everything. It's 15 years of not being good enough. It's 15 years of everyone telling me I'll never be Jordan. It's 15 years of carrying a whole city, a whole generation, and I keep letting them down." Savannah sank down against the door, her heart breaking for the man she loved. "You haven't let anyone down," she whispered. "I let you down. I let the kids down. I let Cleveland down. I let myself down." And then the crying started again, even more intense than before. By 6 a.m., Savannah realized this wasn't going away. She had been sitting outside the bedroom door for over 3 hours, alternating between pleading with LeBron and listening to heartbreaking silence. The kids were starting to wake up. Zuri would be asking for daddy soon. She always wanted him to make her breakfast on Saturday mornings. Bronny and Bryce would want to know why Mum was sleeping in the hallway. She needed help, but didn't know who to call. He was LeBron's agent and close friend, but this felt too personal. Gloria, LeBron's mother, would be here immediately, but what could she do that Savannah couldn't? For the first time in years, Savannah felt completely alone and out of her depth. "Mama." Zuri's little voice came from down the hall. "Where Daddy?" Savannah's heart clenched. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that Daddy is having an emotional breakdown? "Come here, let Mama make you breakfast." But as she led Zuri downstairs, she caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. She looked exhausted, worried, scared. The kids would see it immediately. In the kitchen, she went through the motions of making breakfast while her mind raced. What if LeBron was having some kind of mental breakdown? What if he was thinking about hurting himself? The thought sent waves of panic through her body. Yes, he was devastated about basketball, but he wouldn't, could he? She realized she didn't know, and that terrified her more than anything. What was happening inside that locked room was even worse than Savannah's worst fears. Inside the master bedroom, LeBron James was experiencing the darkest night of his soul. He sat on the edge of the bed, still in his travel clothes from over 6 hours ago, staring at his championship rings on the nightstand. 2 rings. After 15 years in the NBA. 2 rings, he whispered to himself, his voice hoarse from crying. Jordan had 6, Kobe had 5, Magic had 5, Duncan had 5. The numbers swirled in his head like torture devices, each one a reminder of how he had fallen short, how he would always fall short. He picked up his phone for the first time since getting home. The screen showed 247 missed calls, 1,847 unread text messages, and 400+ social media notifications. His agent Rich Paul had called 23 times, his mother Gloria 15 times, his business partner Maverick 18 times. Everyone wanted to know what was next for the king, but the king was dead. In his place sat a 33-year-old man, who suddenly felt 100 years old. Every muscle ached, not from basketball, but from the weight of expectations he had carried for 2 decades. He opened his laptop, something he rarely did at this hour, and made a decision that would send him deeper into the darkness. He Googled LeBron James failure. 3.2 million results in 0.47 seconds. The headlines attacked him from every angle. LeBron chokes again in finals. The king with no kingdom. Jordan would never get swept. Is LeBron James the most overrated player ever? LeBron's legacy. Great player, not clutch champion. Each headline was like a dagger to his already wounded soul. But he couldn't stop reading. It was like picking at a scab, painful but somehow compulsive. Hours passed as LeBron scrolled through an endless stream of criticism and comparisons that made him feel smaller and smaller. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. This was about identity. Without basketball success, who was LeBron James? He looked at family photos on his nightstand, him with Savannah on their wedding day, holding each of his children as babies, family vacations where everyone was smiling. Would they still love him if he wasn't LeBron James the basketball superstar? Would they still be proud of him if he was just LeBron James the failure? The doubt ate at him like acid. By noon on Saturday, Savannah made a decision that she knew LeBron might never forgive her for. She was going to call for help, even if it meant violating his privacy. Her first call was to Gloria James. "Mama Gloria," she said when LeBron's mother answered on the first ring. "I need you to come over right away. Something's wrong with LeBron." "What kind of wrong?" Gloria's voice immediately shifted into protective mother mode. "He locked himself in our bedroom last night after we got home from Oakland. He won't come out, won't eat, barely talks to me through the door. I'm scared, Mama Gloria. I've never seen him like this." Gloria James had raised LeBron as a single mother through poverty, through early fame, through every challenge life had thrown at them. She had seen her son disappointed before, but Savannah's voice told her this was different. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said simply. Her second call was to Dr. Michael Stevens, the family physician, who had treated the James family for years. "Dr. Stevens, it's Savannah James. I need your advice about LeBron." She explained the situation, and Dr. Stevens listened with growing concern. "Mrs. James, what you're describing sounds like it could be a significant depressive episode. Has LeBron ever talked about feeling hopeless or worthless? He said he was done. He said he couldn't do this anymore." Dr. Stevens was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to give you the number for Dr. Michelle Johnson. She's a sports psychologist who specializes in working with elite athletes going through identity crises." But when Gloria James arrived and heard what was happening behind that door, she would make a decision that shocked everyone. Gloria James arrived at her son's home, looking exactly like what she was, a mother whose child was in pain. She had raised LeBron through every challenge, but as she stood outside that locked bedroom door, she realized this might be the biggest challenge yet. "Baby," she called through the door, her voice carrying all the love and authority that only a mother can possess. "It's Mama, open this door right now." For a moment, Savannah hoped that Gloria's voice would accomplish what hours of pleading couldn't, but the silence continued. Gloria tried the handle, still locked. She knocked more firmly. "LeBron Raymond James, you open this door and talk to your mama." Nothing. Gloria stepped back from the door, and Savannah saw something she had never seen before, uncertainty in the eyes of the woman who had always seemed to have all the answers when it came to her son. "He's never shut me out before," Gloria said quietly, "even when he was a teenager, even when he was angry with me. He never shut me out completely." They sat in the hallway together, 2 women who loved LeBron James more than life itself, feeling helpless and afraid. "Tell me exactly what happened," Gloria said. Savannah walked her through everything: the panic attack at the arena, the silent flight home, the lock clicking, the crying, the "I'm done" that had chilled her to the bone. Gloria listened to every detail, her expression growing more concerned. "This is about more than basketball," she said finally. "This is about 20 years of carrying weight that no person should have to carry." "What do you mean?" Gloria sighed deeply. "Savannah, you've been with my son for 16 years, but I've been with him for 33. I've watched what this pressure has done to him since he was 17. The expectations, the criticism, the constant comparisons, the responsibility he feels for everyone, his teammates, his city, his race, kids who look up to him. It's been building up for years." She paused, staring at the locked door. "I think it finally broke him." Just then, Rich Paul arrived. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his usual confident demeanor replaced by genuine worry. "Any change?" he asked immediately. Savannah shook her head. "Rich, this isn't about basketball contracts. This is about LeBron's mental health." Rich nodded. "I get that, but sitting in that room alone isn't going to help him. We need to get him to talk to someone." That's when Savannah mentioned Dr. Michelle Johnson. Dr. Michelle Johnson had worked with elite athletes for over 20 years. She had helped Olympic gold medalists through post-competition depression, NFL stars through career-ending injuries, NBA players through personal crises, but she had never made a house call, until today. When Savannah called her that afternoon, Dr. Johnson immediately understood the severity of what was happening. "Mrs. James, what you're describing sounds like an acute stress reaction combined with what might be a major depressive episode. The fact that he's isolating himself completely is concerning." Dr. Johnson was a small woman with kind eyes and a calm presence, but as she stood outside LeBron James's bedroom door at 6 p.m. on June 9th, she knew this would be one of her most challenging cases. "Mr. James," she called through the door, her voice professional but warm. "My name is Dr. Michelle Johnson. I'm not here as a therapist. I'm here as someone who understands what you're going through." Silence. "I work with athletes who carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. Athletes who feel like they're failing not just themselves but entire cities, entire communities." Still nothing, but Savannah thought she heard movement inside the room. "The pressure you're feeling, the sense that you've let everyone down, the feeling that you'll never be good enough no matter what you accomplish. I've seen it before. You're not alone in this darkness." More movement. The sound of footsteps. "I know you think that opening this door means admitting weakness, but it takes more strength to ask for help than it does to suffer in silence." The footsteps stopped right at the door. "You don't have to be the king right now, LeBron. You don't have to be perfect or strong or inspirational. You just have to be human." And then, for the first time in over 18 hours, they heard LeBron's voice. "I don't know how to not be the king," he said, his voice muffled by the door. "Everyone expects me to be something I can't be anymore." Ruplechts. Dr. Johnson looked at Savannah and Gloria, giving them a slight nod. This was progress. "Can you tell me what you can't be anymore?" she asked gently. A long pause. Then, "Perfect. I can't be perfect anymore. And if I'm not perfect, then I'm nothing." Dr. Johnson's response would be the key that finally unlocked more than just the bedroom door. "LeBron," Dr. Johnson said softly but clearly, "perfection is an illusion. It's a standard that no human being can meet consistently. The fact that you've carried that burden for as long as you have is remarkable, but it's also what's breaking you right now." Silence from behind the door. "Windy, why?" "I've worked with Olympic champions who felt like failures because they won silver instead of gold. I've worked with MVP athletes who felt worthless because they lost in the playoffs. But I'm supposed to be different," came LeBron's voice, stronger now but filled with pain. "I'm supposed to be able to handle it." "Says who?" Dr. Johnson asked directly. "Who decided that mental toughness means never struggling with pressure, never feeling overwhelmed, never needing help?" Another pause. "Mental toughness isn't about never falling down, LeBron. It's about getting back up when you do fall. And sometimes, getting back up requires asking for help." They heard the sound of the lock turning. Slowly, the door opened. The man standing in the doorway looked like LeBron James, but he was almost unrecognizable. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. His usually maintained appearance was disheveled. His famous smile was gone. But for the first time in over 18 hours, LeBron James was facing the world again. "I don't know how to not be perfect," he said, looking directly at Dr. Johnson. "Everyone expects me to have all the answers, to always bounce back, to be inspirational even when I'm dying inside." Dr. Johnson nodded with understanding. "How long have you been dying inside?" LeBron's face crumpled, and fresh tears started flowing. "Years, maybe my whole career." Gloria stepped forward and pulled her son into a hug. He collapsed into his mother's arms like the child he had never really been allowed to be. "My baby," Gloria whispered, holding him tight. "My sweet baby boy." Savannah joined the embrace, and for several minutes they stood in that doorway, a family holding each other together. By early evening, Dr. Johnson had convinced LeBron to come downstairs and sit with his family. The kids had been remarkably patient, but they deserved to see their father. Bronny and Bryce sat on either side of their father on the couch, while Zuri climbed onto his lap. For the first time since the finals loss, LeBron smiled, small and fragile, but genuine. "Daddy was sad," Zuri said, touching his face with her tiny hands. "Yeah, baby," LeBron managed. "Daddy was very sad, but Daddy's getting better." Dr. Johnson had suggested this family meeting as a crucial step. Children know when something is wrong. "I want to talk to you guys about what happened," LeBron began, his voice still shaky. "Daddy wasn't just sad about losing the basketball game. Daddy has been carrying around heavy feelings for a long time." Bronny, mature beyond his 13 years, looked directly at his father. "What kind of heavy feelings?" LeBron took a deep breath. "Feelings that I'm not good enough. Feelings that I'm letting people down. Feelings that no matter what I do, it's never enough." "But Daddy," Bryce said with the clarity that only children possess, "you taught me that being good enough isn't about winning, it's about trying your best and being a good person." out of the mouths of babes. LeBron looked at his 11-year-old son with wonder. You're right, buddy. I guess I forgot to teach it to myself. Sometimes grown-ups forget important things, Zuri added seriously, making everyone smile despite the heavy conversation. Daddy, Bronny said carefully, are you going to be okay? LeBron pulled his oldest son closer. I'm going to work very hard to be okay. It might take some time, and I might need help from people like Dr. Johnson, but yes, I'm going to be okay. Promise? Zuri asked. LeBron looked at his daughter, then at each member of his family. For the first time in years, he was making a promise not about basketball, but about taking care of himself. I promise, baby girl. Daddy promises. As Sunday evening approached, LeBron made a decision that surprised everyone. He asked Savannah to get him Kobe Bryant's phone number. Kobe and LeBron had a complicated relationship. They had been rivals, each representing different eras of Lakers' greatness. But LeBron knew that if anyone would understand the pressure of being compared to Michael Jordan, it would be Kobe. You sure about this? Savannah asked. LeBron nodded. He's been where I am. The phone rang twice before Kobe answered. I was wondering when you'd call, Kobe said without any greeting. You knew I would. Bro, I've been exactly where you are right now. Different circumstances maybe, but I've been in that dark place where everything you've worked for feels meaningless. They talked for 2 hours. Kobe shared his own struggles with perfectionism, with the weight of expectations, with the fear of not being good enough. The Mamba mentality isn't about being perfect, LeBron, Kobe told him. It's about accepting failure as part of growth. You've been so afraid of failing that you forgot how to succeed. But the comparisons to Jordan, the criticism. Fuck the comparisons, Kobe said bluntly. You're not Jordan, you're not me. You're LeBron James, and that's enough. More than enough. They talked about mental health, about therapy, about separating identity from performance. I should have called you years ago, Kobe admitted. I should have told you that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. When LeBron hung up, he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Understood. The conversation with Kobe would lead to the most important realization of LeBron's life. Monday afternoon brought an unexpected catalyst for healing. Bronny wrote his father a letter and slipped it under the office door. Dad, I know you think you let everyone down, but I want you to know that you never let me down. Not once. I don't care if you never win another championship. You're my hero because you're my dad, not because you're LeBron James the basketball player. You're my hero because you show me how to work hard. You're my hero because you love mum and take care of our family. You're my hero because you help other people. Please come out and be our dad again. Zuri keeps asking why you're sad, and I don't know what to tell her, except that even heroes need time to heal sometimes. We love you no matter what. Your son, Bronny. When LeBron read that letter, something shifted inside him. My 13-year-old son gets it, he said to Dr. Johnson through his tears. He understands something I forgot. That being a good man is more important than being a perfect player. Dr. Johnson smiled. Children often see things more clearly than adults. They haven't learned to complicate simple truths. I need to be the father they deserve, LeBron said with new determination. Basketball is what I do. It's not who I am. That realization became the foundation of his healing. Tuesday evening marked exactly 48 hours since LeBron had locked himself away. To commemorate his emergence, Savannah suggested something they hadn't done in months. A family dinner with no phones, no TV, no distractions. LeBron looked around at his family for the first time in longer than he cared to admit. When was the last time he had sat through a meal without checking his phone, without his mind being on basketball? Daddy, tell us a story, Zuri demanded. Normally, LeBron would tell basketball stories. Tonight, he told her about the day she was born, about how scared and excited he had been, about how perfect she was, how she made him understand love in a completely new way. Bryce asked about growing up without much money. LeBron found himself sharing stories he rarely told, about his mother's struggles, about moving from place to place, about how family had always been his foundation. Bronny asked the hardest question. Dad, are you going to be okay? I mean really okay? LeBron gave him the most honest answer he could. I don't know, son. I'm going to work really hard to be okay. I'm going to keep talking to Dr. Johnson. I might have good days and bad days. That's okay, Bronny said simply. We'll have good days and bad days with you. The unconditional love of his family was teaching LeBron lessons that no championship could. Wednesday morning, exactly 60 hours after his breakdown began, LeBron did something he hadn't done since returning from Oakland. He looked at himself in the mirror, really looked. The man staring back at him still showed signs of stress and exhaustion, but there was something different in his eyes. Not emptiness, but a spark of hope. I'm LeBron James, he said to his reflection. I'm a basketball player, but that's not all I am. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son. I'm a man who's been carrying too much weight for too long, and that's okay, that's human. He paused, studying his own face. I'm not perfect. I never was, and I never will be, and that's okay too. For the first time in 20 years, LeBron James was beginning to accept himself as simply human. Wednesday afternoon brought the decision that would define the next chapter of LeBron's life. Not about which team to join, but about how he wanted to live. "I want to keep working with you," he told Dr. Johnson. "Not just now, while I'm in crisis. I want to make mental health maintenance a regular part of my life." "That's one of the wisest decisions you could make," Dr. Johnson replied. They discussed ongoing therapy, regular sessions, strategies for managing pressure, techniques for maintaining perspective. "The fact that you're choosing to prioritize your mental health, that's not weakness, that's leadership." That evening, LeBron called Rich Paul. "Rich, I'm ready to make my decision about free agency." "Okay," Rich said carefully. "What are you thinking?" "I want to go to the Lakers, but not for the reasons everyone thinks, not to chase championships. I want to go somewhere where I can have a fresh start while focusing on being the best version of myself." "Are you sure?" "There's going to be enormous pressure in LA. There's enormous pressure everywhere. But for the first time in years, I feel like I have the tools to handle it." Exactly 72 hours after locking that bedroom door, LeBron James walked downstairs and joined his family for breakfast. He looked different. There was peace in his posture, in his eyes, in his presence. "Good morning, family," he said, and his voice carried warmth that had been missing for much longer than just the past 3 days. "Morning, Daddy." Zuri ran to him immediately, and he scooped her up, spinning her around until she giggled. "How are you feeling today?" Savannah asked, studying her husband's face. LeBron smiled genuinely for the first time since before the finals. "I feel human. For the first time in years, I feel like it's okay to be human." "What now?" Bryce asked. LeBron sat down at the breakfast table, pulling Zuri onto his lap. "Now we figure out what comes next, together, as a family." "Are you going to play basketball again?" Bronny asked. LeBron nodded. "Yes, I'm going to play basketball, but I'm going to play it differently. I'm going to play as LeBron, the person who happens to be really good at basketball, not as the king who has to be perfect all the time." "What's the difference?" Savannah asked. "The difference is that LeBron the person can have bad games, can lose in the playoffs, can be criticized, and still come home to this table and know that he's loved for who he is, not what he does." But the most incredible part of this story was still to come. Those 72 hours in that locked bedroom changed everything. When LeBron emerged, he wasn't the same person who had walked in after Game 4. He was stronger, more authentic, more human. 2 weeks later, he announced his decision to join the Lakers. The press conference was different from any he had held before. Instead of talking only about championships, he talked about growth, about new challenges, about mental health. "I've learned something important recently," he said to the media. "Basketball is what I do. It's not who I am." The therapy sessions continued throughout his Lakers career. Dr. Johnson became a regular part of his life, helping him develop healthy coping mechanisms. Most importantly, he started talking openly about mental health. He became an advocate for athletes struggling with expectations. He started a foundation focused on mental health resources for young athletes. "I want kids to know that it's okay to not be okay sometimes," he said in interviews. LeBron didn't just survive his breakdown. He used it as a catalyst for the most successful period of his life. In 2020, he would win his 4th championship with the Lakers. But more than that, he won something more valuable: peace with himself. The criticism didn't stop, the pressure remained intense. But LeBron had something he didn't have before those 72 hours: perspective. He realized his worth wasn't determined by championships or statistics. His worth came from being a good father, loving husband, positive influence, and yes, a damn good basketball player. But in that order. When the Lakers won the championship in the bubble, LeBron's celebration was different. There was joy, but also a sense of completeness that had nothing to do with basketball. "This one's for everyone who struggles in silence," he said after the victory. "This one's for everyone who thinks they have to be perfect. You don't. You just have to be you." June 8, 2020, exactly 2 years after the breakdown, LeBron was in the NBA bubble, preparing for what would become a championship run. He called Dr. Johnson that morning. "2 years ago today, I was the most broken I'd ever been," he told her. "Today I'm the most whole I've ever been." "What's the difference?" she asked. 2 years ago, I thought I had to be perfect to be worthy. Today I know I'm worthy because I'm human." That night, LeBron posted something on Instagram that surprised his followers. 2 years ago, I learned the most important lesson of my life. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to ask for help. To anyone out there fighting battles in silence, you're not alone, you're not weak, and you're worthy of love exactly as you are. The post received millions of likes and thousands of comments from people sharing their own struggles. LeBron had started a conversation that reached far beyond basketball. Today, when young athletes reach out to LeBron about pressure and expectations, he shares this story, not the sanitized version, but the real, raw, painful truth about carrying the world's expectations. He tells them about the locked door, about the crying, about feeling not good enough. He tells them about Dr. Johnson, about the importance of therapy, about learning to separate identity from performance. The strongest thing you can do is admit when you're not strong enough, he tells them. The most powerful thing you can do is show your vulnerability, because sometimes our greatest victories come from our deepest defeats. Sometimes we have to break down completely before we can build ourselves back up into who we're truly meant to be. LeBron James learned that lesson in 72 Hours of Darkness, and it made him not just a better player, but a better man. The king didn't die in that locked bedroom, he was reborn.